It's fantastic to see so many of you here today. Today I'm going to talk about some research that myself and my colleague Miranda Morosa did, looking at understanding the barriers and enablers to work that we wish to do at the centre. So this has grown out of a centre-funded project looking at listeria, and rather than waiting to when there's an outbreak situation, we're trying to track down the source of listeria. This is when we want to go into processing plants when maybe there's no particular problem and try to understand where potential problems can occur and use this knowledge about the source of listeria to put in control regimes that will work to prevent problems occurring in the future. So this project had 4 work streams, and the first work stream is what I'm going to talk about today, and that's stakeholder perceptions. Now, there's a sort of perception out there that scientists and academics get very excited about their science and their technology and don't necessarily think too much about the relevance of their research to industry or maybe the implications of their findings to the New Zealand Inc. image around food safety. And we wanted to counteract that, to front foot it, by going out and talking to the industry, talking to the regulatory authorities and sort of saying, this is what we propose to do. What are your concerns about this? What excites you about this? Do you think we're on the right track? So how do we do this? We went out and we spoke to people, face-to-face interviews. They were recorded, transcribed, sent back to the interviewees to make sure that they were happy with what they said, and then we pulled the relevant points from that. So in total, 19 people were interviewed across a range of New Zealand food and beverage companies, companies that were exporting, companies with a domestic focus, across a wide range of sectors. And we also interviewed people from 2 regulatory agencies. What did we ask them? Well, we asked them what listeria means to them, what sort of controls do you have in place, do you have any historical data you can provide, what sort of barriers do they see in being involved in this research, what would they like to know, how could this research help them? And then if they did want to get involved in the research to actually go in and look for listeria, what sort of assurances would they need to have before they started to work with us? I've got some quotes here I'd like to share with you. Seafood company said, sounds quite exciting. The benefits of the project outweigh any risks. And they want to protect the whole industry. If anyone has an issue, it affects everyone else. Horticultural industry, I see the benefits, understanding listeria better, especially in our raw material supply chain, is important because it can help us minimise further risks. I'm really interested to know if there are multiple strains coming for the same source. Is it brother and sister listeria? Or have they got a couple of different potential sources? We don't get that sort of information at the moment. Poultry industry. They're proud that New Zealand has a safety record and they want to keep that, saying things such as an exporting nation, if we cannot actually be the best in the world, then we are screwed for the next 20 years, as food safety is what our reputation is based on. And then, Peterson's down the bottom, you probably can't see this. This is a regulatory agency, fantastic research. Great to have it being done. Great to understand where listeria comes from and how it tracks through. It will enable companies to understand their danger points better. It will give them the opportunities to validate new interventions. So we're pretty pleased. There are obviously some very positive comments about this research. And then there's also some concerns, of course. This is a common concern, that more sophisticated tools, we're finding more and more listeria, and it may get to the point we'll not be permitted to eat anything eventually. This tool here is this comment here is very important. If whole genome sequencing data is compared to clinical data, then it could be linked back to us, and obviously that's not good. They're worried about even being involved in this research. If you're a company and you have people from Food Safety Science Research Centre come into your company, does that actually suggest to the public there's a problem? There may not be a problem. So there's concerns about the perception of actually working with us. So if the results of testing get into the public domain and people don't understand the science, there's all this emotion around it, you just need one journalist going, wah, wah, wah. And The industry people we spoke to were very adamant that if we're going to get involved in this research, we have to front up and we have to explain to the journalists, to the public, the implications of what we're finding, what we're doing. Obviously, a lot of companies do positive release of listeria. They hold their products, they test for listeria, and then when it's negative, they release it. And companies are very concerned that if they test for listeria, if our more sophisticated techniques find listeria after it's been released, this could lead to a product recall situation. And as this person says here, they're worried about how this could happen, and it's not going to happen to us. We won't need you work with us unless you can put assurances around the fact that any testing you do will be done prior to release. And then from the regulatory agency, they were worried about this enormous pool of information that's contained within a whole genome sequence. Obviously, you can identify sources, but there may be things in there that we don't even know are of relevance. And if these whole genome sequences get released or become publicly available, what could be mined out of these sources in years to come? So they're worried about the information in the future. And so we have to have tight control over how these whole genome sequences will be managed. So in summary, all interviewees were extremely positive. Those companies that dealt with listeria on a daily basis were far more positive than the companies which weren't used to dealing with listeria, and that's not surprising. The advantages, for many companies, listeria is posing an ongoing challenge in terms of cost and time and potential risk, and they could all see that the better knowledge about source of listeria, better knowledge on how to control it, would be advantageous to them. The barriers of the proposed research focused on its impact on the current approval practices, i.e. they may have a system in place that's approved, that works for them most of the time, and if we go in and say, actually, you've got far more listeria there than we thought you did, how's it going to impact upon what they're actually doing, because it's working now. As I've already mentioned, though, we're concerned that maybe our results will find that there's listeria, products already in the market containing listeria, and they may have to get into a recall situation, which obviously involves reputational damage. And I think this last point here is very important, and it's the potential that whole genome sequences could implicate them in cases of illness that occurred 5, 10, 20 years ago if the sequences are available from the source of illness. So it's historical sources of listeria outbreaks, and they're concerned about the regulatory and legal ramifications of this, economic and the reputational damage. The knowledge that we have, the opinions that we have is that, okay, you could actually perhaps find out that if you mine some whole genome sequencing, that it's a possibility that this isolate that came from your plant is the same as an isolate that caused illness 5, 10 years ago. Legally, that would be almost impossible to prosecute on, but obviously you only have to get that sort of information to the public domain to cause concerns to companies. So, key assurances required by companies before they would work with us. They wanted to make sure that MPI was on board with the research and there was a clear understanding of a response that a positive result would trigger. And for most companies that are dealing with listeria, they have food control plans, and what happens if a positive result is clearly outlined in those, and in most cases, they would need to be followed. And of course, as I've already mentioned a few times already, companies were very concerned that we had to design our testing regimes in such a way that a positive listeria could not be found after the product had been released or was still in the marketplace. Key assurances that MPI wanted. We had to make it very clear to every company we worked with what the implications of a positive listeria result would be. Once again, we had to work around this understanding that there'd be no product recalls generated. We had to ensure that confidentiality would be maintained and due consideration be given to the reputational damage of New Zealand Inc. of publishing the research. If we were to publish any data, we had to probably use truncated sequences and do it in such a way that obviously we don't damage reputation. And the whole genome sequencing information that will be generated will be securely stored and not made widely available. So the take-home message, prior to working with a company, The research team need to understand the company's food control plan or risk management program and take steps to ensure that its products are listeria-free. A research plan that includes the response associated with finding listeria will need to be agreed upon, and MPI must be involved in the development of the response plan. So the bottom line, and this is something that I shouldn't really have to say, but I feel I need to, that prior to carrying out research, it's actually worthwhile to go out and invest the time and money in talking to people, talking to the industry, talking to the regulatory authorities. And of course, this reduces the possibility of unwanted surprises. It will strengthen the research program, as it has in this case, and it will enhance the potential benefits to the industry. Thank you.